Okay, so I'm going to make an argument, okay? I'm going to explain to you that the Bible, what it says, isn't really accurate. All right? I'm going to reconstruct the historical Jesus, and I'm going to tell you, based on my reading of the history and of the Bible, what he really believed. Okay? And just to be clear, I'm not a scholar. I really haven't studied the Bible that much. Okay? All I've done is a lot of independent research. So take my words with a grain of salt, okay? And feel free to challenge me or question my argument at any time. Just raise your hand. All right. So, before I talk about Jesus, I want to talk about the historical circumstance of Jerusalem and Judea at this time. Okay? So, let's do a brief summary of what we learned so far. We've learned that King David was the founder of the religion, okay, one of the main founders of the religion. And at this time in history, in about 1000 BCE, this is really the height and peak of the state of Israel. And they're very confident, very open, very generous. Okay? But after David dies, his son Solomon is not able to keep the kingdom together, okay? And it splits into two. The northern kingdom and Judah. Over time, because Israel is in such a strategic location, right? The Levant is the center of the world. Both of these places will be conquered by foreigners. The northern kingdom will become conquered by the Assyrians. Judah will be conquered by the Babylonians. And the elite are sent off into exile in Babylon, where they basically develop the religion of Judaism of its modern form, okay? The Persians return the Jews back to Judea, Israel, and there they write the Bible, okay? And this comes out 444. But then the Persians are conquered by the Greeks, by Alexander the Great in 301. And now Ptolemy, the Greek general, is in charge of the area. And Ptolemy is in charge of Egypt. And Egypt is very wealthy. So Ptolemy prefers to use money to resolve disputes. So what he does is basically say to the Jewish elite, the priests, hey, your religion is really interesting. Why don't you guys come to Alexandria, the capital of Egypt, and translate your Hebrew Bible into the Greek Bible so that we can all appreciate the beauty and power of your words, okay? And we call this Bible the Septuagint. Septuagint. And it's a very important, you don't have to know this word, but like, remember, this is the Greek Bible, and it becomes the basis of Christianity, okay? Because most people, by the time Christianity comes, won't read Hebrew, they'll be able to read Greek. But then in 167 BCE, Jerusalem is conquered by the Seleucid Empire, Antiochus. And Antiochus is a thug. So he comes and he desecrates the temple by offering a sacrifice to Zeus, a pig sacrifice to Zeus in their temple. And this offends the Jews so much, they launched a decades-long guerrilla warfare against the Seleucid Empire, okay? In 63 BCE, the Romans conquer Jerusalem. Pompey the Great, the Roman general, comes and conquers, lays siege to Jerusalem. He kills tens of thousands of Jews and enslaves others and sends them across the empire. Okay? So, at this point in history, and Jesus is born a few decades later, at 4 BCE, right? The Jews have become extremely fanatical about their religion. Okay? They need to explain if they are the chosen people, if God, their Yahweh, is the best God in the world, why is this crap happening, right? Why did their kingdom become dissolved and then conquered by foreigners? And not only that, but these foreign powers, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans, they come and they insult their God. They burn down the temple, they desecrate the temple, and they kill a lot of God's chosen people. So why is this happening? And the explanation, there's a twofold explanation. The first explanation is we were not loyal enough to God. God sent these foreigners to conquer us because we disobey God. We worship foreign idols and we refuse to follow God's commandments. Okay, that's the first explanation. And the second explanation is the idea of apocalyptic eschatology. Okay, apocalyptic eschatology, okay? This is a very big term, and I need you guys to know it because it's important for future classes, okay? So let's look at what this means. Eschatology is Greek, comes from the Greek eschaton, which means the end, okay? The end of the world, end times. Apocalypse is Greek for revelation or unveiling, okay? Revealing. So apocalyptic eschatology means telling you how the world ends with the return of God. Okay? So all this crap is happening because God is planning to make his return, to smite all his enemies, to destroy all these empires who have defiled his name. All right? And this is what most Jews believed at this time of Jesus. When Jesus was born, it was assumed that God was about to return to the world and destroy all his enemies. And there were a lot of prophets running around preaching this message. Jesus was one of them, but he was not unique in his message, that the kingdom of heaven was returning. Okay? So any questions about this history? Are you guys clear? Okay, let's continue. All right. So this is the history, but at the same time, what's happening is because the Levant is really the center of the world, it's the meeting place of the world, every single major religion is in the Levant. And Jesus is absorbing and trying to understand these different religions. Okay? So let's talk about the major religions. You have the Greeks with Plato, okay? So let's remind ourselves of what Platonic philosophy is. Plato believes God is called the form of the good. Form of the good. And from the form of the good will emanate other ideas like reason, truth, beauty, justice. And then these will emanate physical manifestations called the forms, okay? So this is called the realm of forms. And this is basically heaven, okay? You can see this as heaven. We live in a shadow reality, which is just an imitation of the form of the good. And our objective in life is to study philosophy in order to return to the form of the good, okay? Only mathematics will help us return to the form of the good. Plato got this idea from the Egyptians, okay? And the Egyptians called this idea sacred geometry, mathematics. Because sacred geometry is a language and thought of the gods. Okay? Does that make sense? That's what's Plato. Also at this time, because of the influence of the Persians, you have Zoroastrianism. Okay? Zoroastrianism. Remember, in Zoroastrianism, the creator is Ahura Mazda. He is the perfect God of light. And he creates a perfect world where we humans are free to choose whatever we want. This world eventually became corrupted by an evil God who is equal to Ahura Mazda. Okay? And now we humans must fight for good. We can choose to fight for evil. But if we fight for good, that will allow good to win out in the end. Eventually will emerge a savior, a messiah, a hero, who will lead the army of light into a final battle against the army of darkness. And in this battle, the army of light will triumph. And then will emerge a river. And then everyone who's ever died will be resurrected from the dead. And everyone will be forced to cross this river. If you've been a good person, if you have fought for the truth, if you've been compassionate, You will cross this river, and you will feel cleansed of all your sins and your mistakes. And you will emerge as a perfect soul who will live in paradise forever. But if you've been a bad person, okay, you will burn in this river, and then you'll be condemned to suffering for eternity. Okay? This is Zoroastrianism. Then you have Buddhism and Hinduism, okay? And again, guys, remember, this world is interconnected. So the Greeks know Buddhism very well, and the Buddhists know the Greeks very well, okay? So, and Jesus will have access to Buddhist and Hindu teachings. In the Buddhist and Hindu tradition, there's a true reality called Brahman. Okay? So think of this as a form of the good. We live in a false reality where we have to suffer in pain. But through our good works, through Dharma, we can achieve moksha. What is moksha? Moksha means liberation back into the Brahman. Okay? So Hinduism is very similar to Platonism. All right? At the same time, besides religions, there are also major philosophies that are roaming around this area, okay? So you have Stoicism, which is what the Romans believe. You have Cynicism, and you have Epicureanism, okay? So these are some of the major ones. Cynicism is what Jesus believed, which is the rejection of all material reality. Okay? Cynics believe that it's important to wear bad clothes and to beg for food because the material reality is a lie or it's evil. Okay? At the same time, you also have these what we call pagan religions or pagan rituals, usually around the cult of Dionysus. Okay? We will talk about this later on in our class because this is very important. But all I want you to remember is these are pagan rituals where people come together and they use psychedelics, they use drugs to get really high in order to increase their religious ecstasy. And this is to create a feeling of oneness, interconnectedness. What's really important of these pagan rituals is to focus on egalitarianism. Okay? So you can be a slave, you can be a rich person, but once you enter these rituals, you're all one and the same. And they reject the social hierarchy of the real world, okay? Not all, but many of these pagan rituals do that. So as you can see, at this time, there's just tremendous religious fever in the world. Everyone's seeking truth. Everyone's seeking a more peaceful, more interconnected, a more real world. Okay? And Jesus is operating within this major climate. And Jesus is a Jesus is a unique religious genius who is able to synthesize all these ideas into a new religion. Okay? But it's not called Christianity. Right? It's not called Christianity. Jesus is not the one who is the founder of Christianity. That person is named Paul. We'll do Paul next class. But Jesus found a new religion that attracts major followers. Okay? And so what is this new religion called? Okay, so at that time, obviously there was not a name for this new religion. But today we call this new religion Gnosticism, okay? Jesus was the founder of a religion called Gnosticism. Not Christianity, Gnosticism. There's a difference. All right, so what is Gnosticism? All right, if you look at most religions, there are three major layers. There's a secret layer, okay, which is only available to the founder as well as his closest followers. There is a inner layer, okay, an inner layer, which is what he teaches his disciples. And there is a public layer, an outer layer, okay, which is what he preaches to the public. Okay, do you understand? So most religions will have this three-tier system. A secret layer, which is the secret teachings, an inner layer, which is what the disciples are taught, and then there's a public layer. Okay? So, and what's important for us to understand is these three layers operate at different levels, and they speak different truths, but they're all interconnected. Okay? They're coherent, and they're one and the same. All right? So, Jesus was a Gnostic. What does this mean? Let's look at the outer layer. Okay? What Jesus was preaching was a religion of compassion, of forgiveness, of mercy, of egalitarianism. So let's look at Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew. This is from the Sermon on the Mount, okay? And this is what he says. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The people in this world who have value are not the rich, but the poor, because God favors them. If you're a poor person, you will find solace and comfort in this idea. You may be poor, you may not be able to eat enough, but God loves you the most. Okay? So this is what Jesus teaches the public. But then the question then is, why would this be true? All right? Why would this be true? And so for this to make sense, we need to understand the inner and the secret layer, which is not revealed to us in Matthew. But there's a secret gospel called the Gospel of Thomas, which we recently discovered, okay? This was discovered in 1945 in a town called Nag Hammadi. And this gospel is not in the Bible, but it reveals to us what Jesus thinks. Okay? So let's look at what he says. There are two things, okay? There is light within a man of light, and he lights up the whole world. If he does not shine, he is darkness. Okay, what does this mean? It can mean many things. So, and as I explained to you, you can look at this quotation from three different layers. At the public layer, there's light within a man of light, and he lights up the whole world. If he does not shine, he is darkness. In the public layer, it means we have to be good people, okay? God favors people who do good things, who are generous, who are compassionate. Okay? That's a public layer. Then there's an inner layer, okay? And the inner layer is, what he's saying to his disciples is, if you want to follow me, you must give up the world. If you're wealthy, give up your wealth. If you're poor, give up your children and your wife and follow me. Be an example to everyone else. Okay? But there's also a secret layer. A secret layer. And let's look at the secret layer. The secret layer is a secret knowledge about the world. A secret understanding of how the world works. That only Jesus and his closest followers understand and recognize. Okay? And this is what we call Gnosticism. And the idea is this. And it basically follows along the lines of Plato and Buddhism, Hinduism. Okay? All right. In the beginning, there's a God, a perfect God, called the monad. Or the one. And he's perfect. He is eternal, he is immutable, and he's perfect. Okay? The God of Plato. The monad creates dyads, okay, pairs that are perfect. One of them is called Sophia. And then these pairs create, with the permission of the monad, triads, okay? And this is all a perfect world because perfection creates perfection. The problem is one of these gods, named Sophia, which is knowledge, she decides she can be like a monad. Remember, what makes a monad special is he creates new things out of his own thoughts. The dyads are forced to couple with each other in order to create new things. So Sophia wants to create her own thing herself, without permission of her partner, without permission of the monad. Okay? But when she did that, she's defying the rules of the universe, and therefore she creates a monster. Okay, this is a monster. And Sophia is ashamed by what she's done. Okay? She's like, oh my God, this was a mistake. This was a travesty. So what she does is she hides this monster in a different reality. Okay? She clouds up this reality. And this monster is ignorant of the true reality. So the monster doesn't know that he's a monster, and he thinks he's a god. And he's lonely, so he starts to create the world, us. Okay? In the Bible, the monster's name is Yahweh. And he creates Adam and Eve, and he creates the world. And the world is completely screwed up because it's all being created by a monster. Okay? And so this is the origin of sin and corruption and evil in this world, because our God is a monster who is in defiance of the true God. Okay? And that's why blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Because if you're poor, you are defying the material reality. To win in this game created by a monster, you yourself have to become a monster. Therefore, the wealthy, the powerful, are evil people. If you're poor, you don't participate in this evilness, and therefore, you are blessed by God. And it was God who will redeem you and reward you at the end of the world. Okay? And who is Jesus? Jesus is the son or a son of a monad who's come to the world to reveal us this truth about our world. Okay? And this is what he says. There is a light within a man of light, and he lights up the whole world. If he does not shine, he is darkness. Okay? Our bodies are evil. Why? Because we feel pain. We die. A perfect God would not make us alive, because it makes no sense. Why would a perfect God condemn his children to the suffering we suffer every day? That makes no sense. Only a monster would do this. But even though the monster creates us, there is still a divine spark in us that comes from the monad. And if we recognize this and we choose a life of goodness by seeking true knowledge, then this light will light the world. But if we do not do this, then we'll continue to suffer in darkness, okay? And this is what the secret teaching is. Guys, in each of us, there's a divine spark of the monad. And so we can defy or escape this reality created by a monster. But you have to recognize this, okay? And this is a secret teaching of Jesus. All right, let's look at one more quotation from the Gospel of Thomas to truly understand this idea. When you make the two one, and when you make the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, and the above like the below, and when you make the male and the female one the same, so that the male not be male or female, and when you fashion eyes in the place of an eye, then will you enter the kingdom, okay? How can you escape this world? You can escape this world by seeing this world, everything is interconnected. These categories, rich, poor, male, female, are created by the authorities in this world who worship a monster. We must recognize the connectedness of the humanity in each and every one of us. That's why it's important to show mercy, to be compassionate, because we're all stuck together. And it's only by recognizing our common humanity that will allow us to escape this world. Okay? When you fashion your eyes in the place of an eye, okay? When you truly see, then you escape. You have eyes, and you think that what you see is true, but it's not true. It's all fake. It's all a lie. You have to see with your soul, with the divine spark that is in you. And then you will see the truth. All right? In this religion, why did Jesus die? Well, I mean, he died because it's a good thing, okay? If you die, you are able to escape back into the true reality. But also, he died in order to awaken us, to inspire us, to grab our attention. All right? Because his death was so tragic that it awed us into focusing our attention into Jesus. And when we focus on Jesus, we focus on his teachings. And slowly over time, for our own self-discovery process, we're able to recognize the true teaching, the secret teaching of Jesus. And once we recognize the true teaching of Jesus, we're able to practice a compassionate, generous, and merciful life. We're able to bring light onto the world, and in our death, we're able to escape back into the true reality. Okay? And that's the true teaching of Jesus. Okay? So does that make sense, guys? All right. So now that we've reconstructed his true belief, let's look at his life. What happened? Okay, so Jesus, at some point, he's able to develop his theory of the world, his religion. And if you believe in your theory, you want to spread it out, okay? You want people to know your theory. So he goes to Jerusalem, which is the religious capital of the Jews, okay? If you want people to pay attention to you, and you want people to recognize you're speaking the truth, you have to go to Jerusalem. The problem is this. First of all, the Romans are in Jerusalem, and they want to kill prophets because they see Jewish prophets as problematic. Second problem is, when you go to Jerusalem, you're competing against other religious authorities, okay? You're now threatening the authority of the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and the Essenes. But Jesus doesn't have protectors. He doesn't have like a powerful political faction protecting him. So the Romans saw an opportunity to teach the Jews a lesson. So they arrested him, and then they crucified him. Okay? Does that make sense? But after they did so, what they didn't recognize is this would turn him into a hero. Okay? Because at this time, everyone is thinking about apocalyptic eschatology. They're thinking the world is ending, the Messiah is coming. And they are so shocked by the death of Jesus that they start to talk about him, okay? Let's do a thought experiment. Let's just say I'm a king, and everyone hates me. Okay? Everyone hates me. I'm a king, but everyone hates me. And there are 3 prophets who speak up against me, okay? The first prophet, Prophet A, says, I am a son of a whore. Okay? My mother was a prostitute. The prophet B is, I killed my brother to usurp the throne. Okay? That's what prophet B says. Prophet C says, I steal from the army. Okay? The money that's supposed to go to the army, I steal. All right? So these are 3 prophets who talk trash about me. And the people are confused as to who to believe. Who do I follow? Prophet A, Prophet B, or Prophet C, right? So how do you know if someone's speaking the truth? Well, you know when the king kills someone, right? Does that make sense? If I kill Prophet B, it means Prophet B must be speaking the truth. And therefore, you will start to follow the teachings of Prophet B. Okay? So, in this time, because the Romans killed Jesus, they turned Jesus into a hero. And people are now interested in the teachings of Jesus. And that's why he became so famous. Okay? And also, if you think about it, Gnosticism is really appealing to people. It makes a lot of sense. Okay? But then comes the most important question in Christianity, which is this. If Jesus himself was a Gnostic, if this is what he taught, that there is a light in us and we must constantly work hard to let the world, to shine the world with our lightness, how do we go from here, Gnosticism, to the Bible, modern-day Christianity, which teaches us that Jesus came to the world to redeem us from our sins? and that he will return to save the world. How did we get from here to here? And these are like two radically different conceptions of the world. In fact, if Jesus were alive today and he saw that we worshiped him as a redeemer, he would be appalled by what he's seen. He would be appalled by Christianity. Okay? And so this is what we will discuss next class. What I will show you next class is the true founder of Christianity. The person who developed this religion is not Jesus, but Paul. Okay? Paul. All right? So Christianity, the religion about Jesus, is very different from Jesus and what he really taught. Okay? All right. Was this clear to you guys? Any questions? Do you have any questions, Michael? Okay, so next class we will look at Paul. Okay?